mission is to build a future where no one needs to come out anymore. Together, we can create a world where everyone has the right to love, to succeed, to have a family, and to live a full, happy life. Welcome back, everyone. Today, I am super excited to have with us amazing guest, Marty.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Let's start with introducing yourself. Tell us, where do you live and what do you do?
So my name is Marty Forth. I am a PhD candidate at the University of Hong Kong in the Social Work and Social Administration Department. I am in my third of hopefully 4 years of study doing my PhD. My thesis focuses on the desire by gays and lesbians to become parents and what is the drive or hindrance of that. So I'm doing a comparative analysis between Hong Kong and Taiwan, looking at populations in both those locations and figuring out how policy and legislation, how culture and faith, religion, how peer groups, how family, especially family, all influence that decision, and what helps with that. Because in both jurisdictions, it's just not happening locally. It's people are going out and doing it, but the law isn't necessarily against it, but it's not for it. Yet these families, we call them rainbow families, are forming. And so what is allowing that to happen?
Wonderful. I would like to dive deeper into details of your work. And before that, I would just like to learn more about you, who you are as a person.
So not obviously, but I am gay. I don't study it just because I come from a real place. I am married. I've been married actually right after I met you. It was my 13th wedding anniversary.
Congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you. And we have an 8-year-old son that we adopted through an open adoption in New York. So we looked at surrogacy, we looked at all the other options, and then eventually went with an open adoption, which has been amazing. And when we first moved to Hong Kong, our intent was to do surrogacy or adoption again, but it just was too hard at that point. And that's kind of what drove me to study this, is that it should be a whole lot easier than it is for gays and lesbians to do this and form families, and they're ready and willing and very capable. So why make it this difficult task when it doesn't need to be?
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this work. I'm just curious, where are you original from?
I am Canadian.
And your husband?
He is American from New York.
Wonderful. So I have a pleasure of hear you talking at Men Having Babies conference in Taipei. And I really appreciate the research that you do and the work that you put in a word. And that's the reason I invite you here to our podcast to share with us more about your findings.
Okay.
Do you mind talking to that a little bit?
Like I said, I'm doing a comparison between Hong Kong and Taiwan. So it's a qualitative study. Mostly. It's a mixed method in some ways. So I'm interviewing people who work in that space, so social workers, government officials, adoption agencies, foster care, facilitators, surrogate people. So I'm interviewing them, and then I'm also interviewing men and women who are gay and lesbian and living in those spaces and have either already become parents or trying to become parents or have made this active decision to never become. So I'm doing interviews with them in both places. And then the second part of it is that I look at existing legislation and why it exists and kind of like the government systems that exist in both spaces to say, why this is designed the way it is and try to understand what that means. So it's a mixed method study. What am I finding so far? I'm finding so far that Taiwan people, gays and lesbians, are are notably more optimistic about their opportunities. That the eventual change in marriage is going to have a dramatic effect on a whole bunch of other things, this trickle-down effect, even though there's no indication that that's what's going to happen. But they are optimistic about it. And there's a liberal thinking, a broader thinking that goes on in Taiwan. Hong Kong, while probably more financially and, structurally secure, people are less optimistic and not as, eager, not as excited. They're as excited. They want to become parents, but they're not going to even try here. They're just going to go somewhere else and do it and then come back potentially.
They won't fight for it.
Yeah, there's a conservativeness that exists here, and people are not feeling the need to fight.
What do you think that is? I mean, your opinion.
In my opinion, I don't know yet because I have to continue with my interviews and then analyze. But what I think is that it's government, a lack of
legislation.
It's not just the legislation, but the actual elected officials. People who are elected here are very conservative, very religious, and nothing gets done in those spaces. They've been negotiating and fighting and discussing improving the equal protections law here. It doesn't include gender orientation. It doesn't include those kinds of protections yet. And they've been discussing it forever, but they just don't move on it. And so it's quite slow moving in that sense. There's a belief that I have not been able to prove that people don't want this. And there's actually study after study after study that have been done year after year after year here that show attitudes about it have changed dramatically. The other part that I find that is the same in both places is that people are very afraid to come out to their parents because of the obligation within Asian families, specifically Chinese culture, this idea that you have a role to fill, and as a child, you have to give your parents a grandchild. And there's this immediate belief that if you're gay, if my son or daughter's gay, they can't give me a child.
Right.
Until they learn that, oh, wait, they can, and they can be biologically connected, and they, there is so many opportunities. So there's lack of knowledge that we have to fight. And then the other trend, two trends that I've seen, and I think maybe you saw when you were at the Men Having Babies conference. One is that guys are not coming out. I haven't talked to so many lesbians about this, but definitely the gay men don't come out until they decide to have a baby.
Right.
They didn't even come out as a gay person, and they're jumping right over that and jumping right into the, I'm gay, oh, and I'm going to have a kid, to their parents.
It's kind of like make it easier for the parent to swallow the news.
Yes. Yeah. And that's that I'm pursuing that maybe, and you could help me because there's a lot of parents that are helping with that, both financially and support wise. The second trend that's kind of been blowing my mind for the past 2 years and then was amplified at the Men Having Babies conference was the amount of single men that are pursuing being parents.
Yes.
And this week alone, I interviewed 2, and they're doing it alone. They're single. They're totally okay with it. They again are relying on their parents and their family and their support networks. But being single, like in the West, we see a lot of single women have babies. There's this desire for maternal connection. We don't see it in guys so much, but here we're seeing it a lot. Yeah.
So the whole process of coming out, it's different in Asian culture.
Yeah, we try so often to apply concepts of coming out to all populations. But really what we know about coming out, and there's a couple various established theories about it, like stages of it, those are very Western ideals.
Right.
And those are not Asian ideals. And so there's a little bit of research about coming out in Asia, coming out in Asian families. And it's different. You don't come out. It's not about me, the individual, announcing. It's about me finding a way to coexist and continue to exist within this family unit because it's about all of us, not about me as an individual. And this is the same debate that goes on with gay and lesbian human rights discussions. The West, it's very individualistic. I have the right to be out. I have the right to be gay. Whereas over in Asia, it's not about me. It's about us. And how do I contribute to the collective good? Both have their advantages, disadvantages. A couple of the stories and the little bit of the research I've read on the coming out process in Asia, it's not about coming out, it's about coming home. And that I bring my partner home with me, and they become part of the family slowly as my friends. And then it's just understood what they are. They're understood to be that person that's so important in my life. But it's not about me forcing it on everybody and having, a big coming out parade.
Right. Well, thank you for bringing in our awareness about this different model where actually a person, when it's decided to coming out, whatever that coming out process might be for them, they are considering the whole family.
Yeah.
And that's so valuable because when one announces a new identity, it's influencing everyone's identity. The whole relationships are changing and shifting in a whole family. It's affecting everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a real butterfly effect in my mind that if you are part of this larger group that's your family and your extended family, you make a change and it changes everybody. And adding a child into that, becoming a family, that's a big thing. So
absolutely.
I'm seeing lots of positiveness, which when I first started asking questions, everyone's like, oh, we don't talk about that. We don't do that. No one's doing that. In reality, they really are.
Like what?
Well, what's lacking for me is visibility. The idea behind the coming out, the Western ideal of coming out, is very visual and very public. And that helps because the one thing we know that educates people is them knowing someone personally. And so to know someone personally who has come out and is living a healthy, quality life and at the same time is gay destroys those negative images of gays being leeches and being sick and being mentally unhealthy and addicted and all these other negative things that are said.
Yes, the power of sharing. I mean, we collect so many stories just in our podcast about people. They are so confused. They didn't know what's happening with them because they didn't have any role models around them. And now we get to live in times where we have these amazing tools like internet, and people show up and share and inspire and let the new generation know that it is possible for them to be successful, to have love, to create their own family, and even have their own children.
Yeah.
And of course, people like you that show up every day and do the work in this space. And I'm curious, what led you to choose to pursue a PhD in this space?
So I have multiple degrees, I guess, way to start. I graduated in Canada, and I was working for a fraternity. I don't know if you know what a fraternity is.
Yes.
And like a collective men's group. Anyway, so I was doing leadership development training for them, and they would fly me to different cities every couple weekends around the States. And I said, just put me in one place. And so they eventually put me in Iowa, which is in the dead center of the United States. Right? And you lived in Minnesota.
I used to live in Minnesota, yes.
Yeah, you know where Iowa is. So like right in the middle of, cornfields and everything. And so I worked there, and I started working for the YMCA also. So the Young Men's Christian Association, that's really about sports and athletics and community centers. So I ran a camp and worked there for 5 years. And then I was like, as a gay man, I need a big city. Like I've lived in the middle of nowhere for long enough. I wanted a big city. So I applied to all major cities for YMCA work and eventually chose to move to New York. And working in New York for the Y, I stayed with the Y for 16 years and just kept moving up. And at some point, the move up took a master's, and I was doing social work in theory anyways. So I got a master's in social work and learned how to be much more clinical and deliberate about what I was doing. And even then, I was working right away. When I moved to New York, I started a group for gay teens at a Y because two of the teens had asked me to do that. And so, of course, I did it. So that work started right away. And I've always done that work. When it's my husband that's job switched, and we, of course, discussed it as a couple and made the decision to move to Asia. And then the idea was if I was going to leave my successful and growing career in the U.S., I needed to do something big for myself that would fill my time here, but also prepare me for when we go back or whatever. And so I said I would be getting a PhD, which my husband did not want me to do. That's what I decided to do. When I originally applied to the universities here, I did not apply to study LGBT populations. I applied to study foster care adoption and transitions and families. But in talking with the woman that eventually became my supervisor, she's like, I'm hearing more passion from you on these other subjects. And she's, an amazing woman and has been doing this mentoring of PhD students for 30 plus years. And she's like, we might as well start with your passion now because you're going to go there anyways.
Right.
Going to change over time anyways. But so why don't we just jump right in with this? I really was trying to avoid it because I felt that it would limit me so much. So that eventually as I go into academia and nonprofit work, he's the guy who studies the gay people, that's so small. But in reality, it isn't. It's actually quite large.
Yes.
It touches on family and health and all these other, huge social science, social systems concepts. So I was glad she pushed me because I'm passionate about it. It's easier to work on something for so long that you're passionate about.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And then as I delve into it, I find all these other groups and these connections.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so beautiful and it's so inspiring to, have living evidence of how following the passion is just opened so many doors that we don't even know they exist, right?
Yeah, so much so.
Yeah. If somebody will tell me that I will have a podcast and interview people around the world, I'll be like, are you kidding me? I barely speak English. That was me 2 years ago, right? Like 2 years ago, no more foreign than that. I would respond like that, right?
Yeah. Like so much in life, you are open to the idea. So if we open ourselves up just enough that these things can present themselves, and then it happens.
Yeah.
And I'm a firm believer of that. And as a clinical social worker, that is a message that is continuously given to people I worked with and groups that I work with, that, half of what we're dealing with here is you opening.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do you think that we could bring more people from outside the rainbow community into this work?
Okay. So how do we bridge the others with us?
Yes.
Okay. Well, one is be strategic. I mean, you have to think about, and this is, I'm a positive thinker. I'm generally quite positive. Drives my husband crazy. I find the positive in almost everything. But in reality, you need that, but you also need the realism that comes with it. You need to know who's against us. In my research, I'm doing a piece on gay and parenting in Asia. So it's whereas mine focuses on Hong Kong and Taiwan, I'm doing this broader piece on what it's like to be gay in Asia. We did with an agency called Planet Ally that's based in Australia and here, and we ran a conference for 2 years now called the Asia Pacific Rainbow Family Forum. We bring together corporates and people who are parenting or working with people who are parenting and gay to discuss, share, learn, all that kind of stuff. The last one we had was in May 2018, and we had 27 countries represented. That I interviewed 17 people to kind of gather these amazing stories that are so unique and different in what it means to be gay and parenting in different parts of Asia. But some of the collective stories that were clear were, we have a safety problem. Kids are unsafe when they are not protected under the law. Right? So they're not protected at school. They're not protected in the community. And it's not because of them. It's because their parents have not been provided guardianship of them, because their parents have not been allowed to legally marry. And that trickles down into affecting the children. So this individual human rights issue is actually a child's rights issue. And so we're trying to reframe that.
That's huge.
We learned across the board that collectively our greatest opposition is from fundamental conservative religious groups, either Muslim or Christian. But at the same time, being religious and faith-driven and gay is possible. And many people think, if you're gay, you can't be religious. And that is just simply not the case.
Yeah,
if you're gay, you can't be Catholic. You can't be Muslim. And you can be. It's just little tiny groups that get a lot of attention for being so against gays and lesbians. They're a minority. They're even more minority than us. And so I say this because I try to keep it positive but real. So we need to know who those oppositions are, because then we need to build around them. We need to build around coming into them. And so getting religious people, getting educators, getting social service, getting government to understand that we exist, that we need their support, that we are voters, taxpayers, we are all these things that are valuable.
Yes.
And bringing those in, I think, is key. And so that's how we bring those other people in. They need to see the connection. They need to see the truth and not the myth. I think I was discussing with you about, like, when we teach teenagers to come out, going back to the coming out idea.
Right.
Things we do to teach them is we get them to make a list of all the people that they need to tell, good and bad. And then from that list, we have them rank who is the easiest to tell, who is going to definitely 100% love you, hug you, support you. And we're going to tell those people first, because we're going to create this whole network of support for you. And then as we get down close to the bottom, those are the hard ones. But because we have this network of support backing you up, surrounding you, they're going to help you come out to those people that are hard.
Absolutely.
And this is the same for building allyship. We need to start with the people that we can get to, that will listen, that will be supportive, or potentially, and just need a little bit of a push before we go to try and get those other people to understand.
Yes.
And then the other part of it is messaging. You know, we as people, as human beings, we construct messages. The religious right and the fundamentalists are really good at creating messages that are so negative and wrong and not based on truth. And we, as the gay community, need to be able to combat that with truth and not just be reactionary.
Right.
And then the last part, and I probably will lose my gay card for saying this publicly like this, the gay communities need to work together more. There's continuously infighting. There's continuously, re-ranking of what's important. Like, we can't move this forward without our sisters and brothers who are trans and the lesbians and the gays. And, there's privilege and there's hierarchy that exists. And we need to address that and be, upfront about it. But it's possible, but we need to do it together, not separately. All these separate stories and messages, it needs to be collective.
That's what I'm hearing. That's the message that I'm hearing from everything that you said, that it's not one's work, it's everybody's work.
Yes.
And everybody's contribution, but knowing that we are going in the same direction. And that direction being is that we are all the same, even if we are different.
Yeah.
And we get to rewrite the beliefs that we grow up with. I see it in my work. You get to be homophobic and then your child is coming out and you get to access that love that you have for your child, which is so much stronger than whatever beliefs you grow up with.
Yep. And that's the story. When I moved to Hong Kong and Asia and started studying things here, there's always this, family is so much more important in Asian culture than it is in Western. It's so much more. And I would be honest, in my own bias, I always thought bullshit. Like, white people love their family just as much and they're just as connected. Look at Italians and, Jewish families. They're so connected. But the reality is there is a larger looming connection and obligation. That's what it comes down to. This obligation to protect and care and connect with your family is considerably deeper here. Knowing that and knowing what you just said, like there's a way to have the conversation that I'm gay and I can be part of this and be healthy and happy and be your son or your daughter or your grandchild or your nephew. Like, there's a way to be that and to use this power of family and connection and obligation to the advantage of the individual and to the family. Yeah.
Yes, and we don't want to ignore the teenagers. They're already making a decision that I will never come out. I will marry who my family expect me to marry, and I'm going to live my life like that.
Yeah. There's a great movie about that called Inside the Chinese Closet. It's a Chinese from mainland China. They follow the lives of 3 people who are single. And it starts out with, there's these parties in China that are run in various large cities for gays and lesbians to intermingle and find a potential fake spouse. So a guy will find a girl, they will get married, that's not pretend. They will have a child, but they will live as a lesbian and a gay man, but they are married, connected, having child. And it's all to satisfy the obligation of the parents.
Sounds very interesting. I will have to watch that movie. And as we come to a closing, I know it's so much more that we could explore. And I want to launch the invitation to have you back so you could share more from your experience of growing up and your experience of creating your own family. Would you?
I totally fine doing that.
I mean, I totally put you on the spot here, but honestly, I believe in, as I say, every person bringing their story and sharing about their experience. I think it's so much power into that. And that's the work that I sign up for. And I will continually ask every individual to come here and share with us their story.
Yeah. I mean, as a person, it is clear that you're a watcher of people and watcher of social situations and social interaction. To be able to watch it, but also be there as a personal participant in the experience. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, it's so much to see and so much to learn, and each one of us contribute as we can.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me and talking, listening, sharing.
My pleasure, and I can't wait to have you back.
I look forward to it.
See you soon.
Until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Redefine Family, a Spark Transformation podcast. Feel free to share your story, knowing that your story could change someone's life. We invite you to spread the love by sharing our message with others. And leave your comments at spark@redefinefamily.com. Until next time, remember that you are the spark in your life. Just shine bright.